that is the power of ice moving along the banks of the Mackenzie River in Fort Simpson, Northwest Territories. The waters are rising, and this year's flooding is in fact hitting record levels. The sirens sounded last night as water reached that 15-meter mark, signaling time for evacuations. And so we bring you the story from Yellowknife. Juanita Taylor is our reporter there on the story, looking at pretty impressive pictures, the sights and sounds. Juanita, how bad is the flooding this year?
It looks so dramatic, doesn't it, Heather? Well, those pictures were from the village of Fort Simpson here in the Northwest Territories, and it's affecting about 60% of Fort Simpson's 1,200 residents. Now, yesterday, as you mentioned, the siren sounded in the village, prompting the evacuation, and that's because water levels reached the 15-meter mark, prompting the evacuation. That's when emergency personnel began going door to door in that area to make sure people were evacuating their homes. And Heather, they said that they saw things floating in floodwaters, things such as canoes, boats, even float planes. Now, every year, the communities along the Mackenzie River brace for flooding. It's just part of spring breakup. But this year in particular, they kept an even closer eye on water levels, and that's because the water levels in Great Slave Lake reached a record high last year. So people also in Jean Marie River, a small, tiny Dene community here in the Northwest Territories, population less than 100, is also experiencing flooding over the weekend. And in Hay River, an evacuation was ordered there as well. So, Heather, people are bracing for flooding, and that is certainly what we're seeing today.
And interesting, the size of these ice flows is just extraordinary. But as you say, this is something that happens every year for the spring melt. And yet I'm wondering, how is the pandemic affecting things this year?
Well, for sure, Heather. The communities have evacuation plans, of course, in place, and their evacuation plans also include coming here to Yellowknife if they need to get evacuated. But because of recent COVID cases in the city, the communities are changing their plans. So they are not coming here to Yellowknife. There's about less than 50 cases, active cases in Yellowknife right now. So for example, folks in Fort Simpson, the long-term care patients, they've been sent to neighboring Norman Wells and Fort Smith for care. Others have gone up into higher ground where there's subdivisions where friends and family lives. But Mayor Sean Welly in Fort Simpson, he knew that it might not be that easy to get some of his community members to evacuate. Take a listen.
I realize we can't literally drag people out of their houses and force them, but strong encouragement to think about, their own safety and comfort.
That was Fort Simpson Mayor Sean Welly, and Heather, he had told CBC News over the weekend that what he is seeing now in his village is exactly what he saw back in 1989 when the village experienced its last flood.
Juanita, thank you very much for that live reporting. Really appreciate it. Juanita Taylor in Yellowknife.